Hello there, and welcome to another gentle journey through the mysteries of our ancient world. Tonight, we're going to drift together into one of humanity's most fascinating and enduring beliefs about what lies beyond this life. We'll explore the peaceful realm of ancient Egyptian afterlife traditions, where death was not an ending, but a beautiful transformation into eternal existence. As you settle into comfort tonight, let your breathing slow and your mind open to the wonder of a civilization that spent thousands of years perfecting their understanding of the soul's journey. The ancient Egyptians created perhaps the most elaborate and hopeful vision of the afterlife that humanity has ever known, and their gentle wisdom still speaks to us across more than 3 millennia. From what we can gather through the incredible archaeological treasures they left behind, the Egyptians didn't fear death as we often do today. Instead, they saw it as a peaceful transition, like the sun setting in the west, only to rise again in the east. This beautiful metaphor shaped everything about how they lived, how they prepared for death, and how they honored those who had passed into the eternal realm. Tonight, we'll discover together how these ancient people created elaborate rituals, magnificent tombs, and detailed guides for the soul's journey that were so comprehensive, so filled with love and care, that they reveal a civilization deeply committed to ensuring that every person, from the mightiest pharaoh to the humblest farmer, could find their way to a peaceful, eternal existence. Let yourself relax as we explore the gentle mysteries of mummification, the profound symbolism of the pyramids, and the beautiful stories contained in the Book of the Dead. We'll learn about the weighing of the heart, the journey through the Duat, and the gods and goddesses who guided souls toward their eternal rest. What makes this exploration so soothing is how these ancient beliefs reveal a profound human desire for continuity, for meaning that extends beyond our brief time on earth. The Egyptians created a vision of the afterlife that was not about judgment or fear, but about transformation and eternal peace. Their tombs weren't places of sadness, but homes prepared with love for the soul's eternal journey. As we continue our peaceful exploration tonight, you'll discover how these ancient beliefs influenced countless other civilizations, how they shaped art and architecture that still takes our breath away today, and how their gentle wisdom about death and transformation continues to offer comfort to people seeking meaning in our modern world. So let your eyes grow heavy as we begin this journey together into the peaceful realm of ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs, where death was simply the doorway to eternal life, and where love and preparation could ensure that every soul found its way home to the gods. As we embark on this gentle exploration of ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs, let's take a moment to understand what we'll discover together in our peaceful journey through time. The world we're about to enter spans over 3,000 years of human civilization, during which the ancient Egyptians developed the the most sophisticated and hopeful understanding of death and the afterlife that humanity has ever created. From what archaeologists and historians have pieced together, we'll learn that Egyptian afterlife beliefs weren't static or simple. They evolved gradually over millennia, growing more complex and more beautiful with each passing dynasty. What began as relatively simple burial customs in the earliest periods blossomed into an elaborate system of beliefs, rituals, and preparations that touched every aspect of Egyptian life. From what archaeologists and historians have pieced together, we'll learn that Egyptian afterlife beliefs weren't static or simple. They evolved gradually over millennia, growing more complex and more beautiful with each passing dynasty. What began as relatively simple burial customs in the earliest periods blossomed into an elaborate system of beliefs, rituals, and preparations that touched every aspect of Egyptian life. Tonight, we'll discover how the Egyptians viewed the human soul not as a single entity, but as a complex being made up of several spiritual components. We'll learn about the Ka, the life force that needed nourishment in the afterlife, and the Ba, the personality that could travel between the worlds of the living and the dead. We'll explore the concept of the AKH, the enlightened spirit that achieved immortality, and understand how these different aspects of the soul work together in the Egyptian vision of eternal life. Our gentle journey will take us through the fascinating evolution of burial practices, from the simple mastaba tombs of the early dynasties to the magnificent pyramids that still inspire wonder today. We'll discover how mummification developed from a natural process in Egypt's dry climate into one of the most sophisticated preservation techniques ever devised, driven by the beautiful belief that the physical body needed to be preserved for the soul's eternal journey. We'll explore the role of the pharaohs, those god kings who served as bridges between the mortal and divine realms. Through their elaborate burial preparations, we'll learn how royal afterlife beliefs gradually spread to nobles, priests, and eventually to common people, creating a democratization of eternal life that was revolutionary for its time. As we continue our exploration, we'll delve into the magnificent Book of the Dead, that gentle guide for souls navigating the afterlife. We'll discover how this collection of spells, prayers, and instructions evolved over centuries, providing comfort and direction for those making the transition from earthly life to eternal existence. We'll learn about the beautiful illustrations that accompanied these texts, creating visual maps for the soul's journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Our peaceful investigation will reveal the profound symbolism behind Egyptian art and architecture, we'll understand how every hieroglyph, every painting on a tomb wall, every artifact buried with the deceased had meaning in the context of the afterlife journey. We'll discover how the pyramids themselves were not just monuments to royal power, but sophisticated resurrection machines designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful transition to godhood. We'll explore the fascinating world of Egyptian gods and goddesses who governed the afterlife realm, from Osiris, the gentle ruler of the dead who offered hope of resurrection, to Anubis, the jackal-headed guide who protected souls during mummification and led them safely through the underworld, to Thoth, the wise god who recorded the results of the heart's weighing. Each deity played a crucial role in the soul's journey, and their stories reveal a pantheon designed to comfort and guide rather than to frighten or punish. Together, we'll learn about the beautiful concept of the weighing of the heart, that pivotal moment in the afterlife journey where the deceased's heart was measured against the feather of Ma'at, representing truth and justice. This wasn't a harsh judgment, but a gentle evaluation of how well a person had lived according to Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order and moral balance that governed both life and death. Our exploration will reveal how Egyptian afterlife beliefs influenced the daily lives of ordinary people. We'll discover how farmers, craftsmen, and laborers prepared for their own eternal journeys, often spending their entire working lives saving and planning for proper mummification and burial. We'll learn about the Ushabti figures, those beautiful servant statues that would work in the fields of the afterlife so the deceased could enjoy eternal leisure. We'll also understand how these ancient beliefs continue to influence our modern world. From archaeological discoveries that still make headlines today to the profound impact Egyptian spirituality has had on art, literature, and contemporary spiritual practices, we'll see how this ancient wisdom about death and transformation continues to offer comfort and inspiration to people seeking meaning in our complex modern world. As we drift through these discoveries together, you'll find that Egyptian afterlife beliefs weren't about escaping life, but about perfecting it for eternity. They represent humanity's most hopeful vision of what death might bring, not an ending but a transformation into something more beautiful, more peaceful, and more meaningful than anything experienced in mortal life. Let us begin our gentle journey through time by discovering how ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs first took root along the life-giving banks of the Nile River. What we know about the earliest Egyptian understanding of death comes to us through archaeological evidence that spans more than 3 millennia, revealing a gradual but profound evolution in how these remarkable people understood the soul's journey beyond mortal life. In the earliest periods of Egyptian civilization, around 3100 BCE, we can see that beliefs about the afterlife were relatively simple, but already showed the seeds of what would become the most elaborate death preparation culture in human history. From what archaeologists have discovered in the earliest burials, it appears that Egyptians initially believed that preserving the body in some form was essential for the soul's continued existence, but they hadn't yet developed the complex theological framework that would later emerge. These early burials, found in simple pit graves in the desert sand, reveal something beautiful about Egyptian thinking even in this primitive period. Bodies were naturally mummified by the hot, dry sand, and the Egyptians noticed that these preserved remains seemed to maintain their connection to life in some mysterious way. This observation, gentle and profound, may have planted the first seeds of the elaborate mummification practices that would later develop. As we move forward through the early dynastic period, around 3000 BCE, we begin to see the emergence of more sophisticated burial practices among the ruling elite. The construction of mastaba tombs, low rectangular structures built over burial chambers, marked the beginning of Egyptian architecture dedicated specifically to ensuring proper transition into the afterlife. These early monuments weren't just graves. They were homes prepared with loving care for the deceased's eternal existence. What's particularly fascinating about this period is how we can trace the development of the concept of divine kingship and its relationship to afterlife beliefs. The earliest pharaohs seem to have been viewed as intermediaries between the human and divine realms, and their burials reflect this special status. From what we can gather through artifacts and early hieroglyphic inscriptions, these god kings were believed to join the gods directly upon death. While ordinary people's fate in the afterlife remained less certain, the Old Kingdom period, spanning from about 2686 to 2181 BCE, represents what many scholars consider the golden age of pyramid building and the full flowering of royal afterlife theology. During this time, we see the construction of the Great Pyramids at Giza, monuments that still inspire wonder today and represent the culmination of Egyptian beliefs about royal resurrection and eternal life. The pyramid texts, first appearing during the reign of Pharaoh Unas around 2375 BCE, provide our earliest written evidence of detailed Egyptian afterlife beliefs. These beautiful and mysterious spells, carved into the walls of pyramid burial chambers, were designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful transformation into a god and his journey to join the imperishable stars. Reading these ancient texts today, we can feel the profound care and spiritual sophistication that went into preparing the king for his eternal journey. What these texts reveal is a complex mythology centered around the god Osiris, whose own death and resurrection became the template for all Egyptian understanding of the afterlife. According to the myth, Osiris was murdered by his jealous brother Seth, but was restored to life through the loving efforts of his wife Isis and sister Nephthys. This story provided the fundamental framework for Egyptian afterlife beliefs. Death was not permanent, and through proper preparation and divine intervention, eternal life was possible. As we continue our exploration into the Middle Kingdom period, 2055 to 1650 BCE, we discover one of the most significant developments in Egyptian afterlife beliefs: the democratization of immortality. What had once been exclusively available to pharaohs and the highest nobility gradually began to spread to a broader segment of Egyptian society. This beautiful evolution suggests a growing belief that eternal life was not just the privilege of divine kings, but a possibility for anyone who could properly prepare for the afterlife journey. The coffin texts from this period show how afterlife spells and instructions that had once been carved into pyramid walls were now being written on the coffins of nobles, priests, and wealthy merchants. This development marks a crucial shift in Egyptian thinking about who deserved eternal life and how it could be achieved. The spells were adapted and expanded to address the needs of non-royal deceased, creating a more inclusive vision of the afterlife. During the Middle Kingdom, we also see the emergence of more standardized mummification practices and the development of elaborate tomb paintings that served as visual guides for the afterlife journey. These beautiful artworks, found in tombs throughout Egypt, show scenes of the deceased enjoying eternal pleasures, fishing in celestial rivers, farming in perfect fields, feasting with the gods, and living in perpetual harmony. The New Kingdom period, 1550 to 1077 BCE, brought us what is perhaps the most famous expression of Egyptian afterlife beliefs: the Book of the Dead. This collection of spells, prayers, and instructions represented the culmination of nearly 2 millennia of Egyptian thinking about death and the soul's journey. Unlike the earlier pyramid texts and coffin texts, the Book of the Dead was designed to be accessible to anyone who could afford to have it copied and placed in their tomb. What makes the Book of the Dead so remarkable is how it reflects the Egyptian understanding that the afterlife journey required both knowledge and preparation. The text provided detailed instructions for navigating the dangers of the Duat, the underworld, spells for protection against hostile forces, and most importantly, guidance for the crucial moment when the deceased's heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. During this period, we also see the flowering of royal tomb construction in the Valley of the Kings, where pharaohs like Tutankhamun, Ramesses II, and Seti I were buried with incredible treasures designed to ensure their comfort and success in the afterlife. These magnificent tombs, carved deep into the western mountains near Thebes, represent the height of Egyptian afterlife preparation, with their walls covered in scenes from the Book of the Dead and other afterlife texts. The tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered largely intact by Howard Carter in 1922, provides perhaps our best evidence of how thoroughly the Egyptians prepared for the afterlife journey. The thousands of artifacts found in his tomb, from golden burial masks to ceremonial chariots to simple sandals, reveal a culture that believed every aspect of earthly life needed to be preserved and perfected for eternal existence. As we explore the later periods of Egyptian history, we can see how afterlife beliefs continued to evolve and adapt to changing circumstances. During the Ptolemaic period, 332 to 300 BCE, when Egypt was ruled by Greek pharaohs descended from Alexander the Great's general Ptolemy, Egyptian afterlife beliefs began to merge with Greek and Roman concepts of the soul and immortality. This cultural blending created fascinating new expressions of ancient Egyptian afterlife wisdom. The cult of Isis, Osiris's divine wife, spread throughout the Roman Empire, bringing Egyptian concepts of resurrection and eternal life to people across the Mediterranean world. This beautiful diffusion of Egyptian spiritual wisdom shows how these ancient beliefs about death and transformation continued to offer comfort and hope to people far beyond the borders of Egypt itself. Throughout all these historical periods, what remains constant is the Egyptian conviction that death was not an ending but a transformation, not a loss but a journey to something better. This fundamental optimism about the afterlife, maintained across 3 millennia of changing dynasties and foreign conquests, reveals a civilization that had developed perhaps humanity's most hopeful understanding of what lies beyond mortal life. As we continue our gentle exploration, let's discover how these ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs created ripples that spread far beyond the borders of Egypt itself, influencing cultures and civilizations across the ancient world and continuing to shape our understanding of death and spirituality even today. The profound impact of Egyptian afterlife beliefs on other ancient cultures reveals just how compelling and comforting their vision of eternal life truly was. When we examine the religious and burial practices of neighboring civilizations, we can trace clear influences from Egyptian concepts of mummification, tomb preparation, and the soul's journey after death. The ancient Greeks, for instance, were deeply influenced by Egyptian wisdom about the afterlife. Greek philosophers like Herodotus and Plato traveled to Egypt to study with Egyptian priests, learning about their sophisticated understanding of the soul and its eternal nature. From what we can gather through their writings, these Greek thinkers were particularly impressed by the Egyptian concept that the soul was complex and multi-layered, not simply a single spiritual essence. Plato's famous theory of the soul's immortality, which would later influence all of Western philosophy, shows clear Egyptian influences in its understanding that the soul pre-exists the body and continues after death. The Platonic idea that earthly life is preparation for a higher spiritual existence echoes the Egyptian belief that mortal life should be spent preparing for the afterlife journey. The mystery religions that flourished throughout the Greek and Roman worlds also drew heavily on Egyptian afterlife wisdom. The cult of Isis and Osiris, in particular, spread across the Mediterranean, offering initiates the promise of resurrection and eternal life through identification with Osiris's death and rebirth. These mystery cults provided comfort and hope to people who found the traditional Greek and Roman understanding of death as a journey to a shadowy underworld insufficiently comforting. What's particularly beautiful about how Egyptian afterlife beliefs influenced other cultures is that they consistently offered hope rather than fear. Unlike many ancient religions that portrayed the afterlife as a place of judgment and punishment, Egyptian beliefs emphasized preparation, protection, and ultimate transformation into a blessed state. This optimistic vision proved irresistibly attractive to people across the ancient world. The influence of Egyptian afterlife beliefs on early Christianity is also profound and fascinating to explore. Early Christian concepts of resurrection, the importance of proper burial, and the soul's journey after death all show clear influences from Egyptian spiritual wisdom. the idea that the body would be resurrected and reunited with the soul, a central Christian belief, closely parallels Egyptian understanding of the relationship between the physical and spiritual aspects of human existence. Early Christian art and symbolism also drew extensively on Egyptian motifs. The Ankh, the Egyptian symbol of eternal life, was adapted into the Christian cross. The concept of the afterlife as a perfect version of earthly existence, the Egyptian field of reeds, influenced Christian visions of heaven as a place where earthly pleasures and relationships would be perfected rather than abandoned. The beautiful Egyptian understanding that preparation and good works during life could ensure a blessed afterlife also profoundly influenced Christian theology. The Egyptian emphasis on ma'at, truth, justice, and moral balance, provided a framework for understanding how moral behavior in life related to rewards in the afterlife that early Christian thinkers found deeply compelling. As we move forward through history, we can see how Egyptian afterlife beliefs continue to influence spiritual and religious thinking even as Egypt itself came under foreign domination. During the Islamic period, many Egyptian concepts about death and burial were incorporated into local Islamic practices, creating unique traditions that blended Islamic theology with ancient Egyptian wisdom about honoring and caring for the dead. The medieval European fascination with Egyptian wisdom, particularly during the Renaissance, led to a renewed interest in Egyptian afterlife beliefs among scholars and spiritual seekers. The discovery of hieroglyphic texts and their eventual decipherment in the 19th century opened up entirely new understanding of Egyptian spiritual sophistication, inspiring everything from romantic poetry to modern spiritual movements. In our contemporary world, Egyptian afterlife beliefs continue to offer comfort and inspiration to people seeking meaning in the face of mortality. Modern archaeological discoveries, like the intact tomb of Tutankhamun or the recent explorations of the pyramids using advanced technology, continue to reveal new details about Egyptian preparation for the afterlife, keeping this ancient wisdom alive in popular imagination. The influence of Egyptian afterlife beliefs on modern spiritual practices is particularly fascinating to observe. Many contemporary meditation and mindfulness practices draw on Egyptian techniques for preparing the consciousness for transition between states of being. The Egyptian understanding that death was simply another state of consciousness, requiring preparation and guided navigation, resonates strongly with modern spiritual seekers. The concept of the soul as having multiple aspects, the Egyptian Ka, Ba, and Ach has influenced modern psychological and spiritual understanding of human consciousness. Contemporary theories about different levels of awareness and the survival of consciousness after bodily death often echo these ancient Egyptian insights about the complexity of human spiritual existence. Modern therapeutic approaches to death and dying also draw on Egyptian wisdom about preparation and acceptance. The Egyptian view that death was natural and potentially beautiful, requiring proper preparation but not necessarily causing fear, offers an alternative to modern Western anxiety about mortality. Hospice care and death doula practices often incorporate elements of the Egyptian understanding that dying is a journey that can be navigated with grace and support. The Egyptian emphasis on the importance of remembrance and continuing connection between the living and the dead has also influenced contemporary grief counseling and bereavement practices. The Egyptian belief that the deceased continued to exist and could be honored and supported through offerings and remembrance provides a framework for healthy grief that maintains connection rather than requiring complete separation. What's particularly beautiful about how Egyptian afterlife beliefs continue to influence our modern world is their fundamental optimism and inclusivity. The Egyptian democratization of immortality, the idea that eternal life was available to anyone who properly prepared for it, offers hope and dignity to all people facing mortality. This ancient wisdom suggests that death is not a defeat, but a graduation, not an ending, but a transformation into something more beautiful than earthly existence. The Egyptian understanding that love and preparation could ensure safe passage to eternal life also continues to comfort people in our contemporary world. The elaborate preparations made by ancient Egyptians for their loved ones' afterlife journeys demonstrate a profound faith in the continuity of love and care beyond death that resonates deeply with people today who are caring for dying loved ones or preparing for their own mortality. As we explore these cultural connections and influences, we begin to understand that Egyptian afterlife beliefs weren't just ancient superstitions, but sophisticated spiritual wisdom that continues to offer guidance and comfort to people across cultures and centuries. Their beautiful vision of death as transformation, their emphasis on preparation and moral living, and their faith in the ultimate triumph of love over loss continue to inspire and comfort people seeking meaning in the face of life's greatest mystery. Now let us drift deeper into the intricate and beautiful details that made Egyptian afterlife beliefs so sophisticated and enduring, As we explore these fascinating aspects, you'll discover how every element of Egyptian death preparation was carefully designed with profound spiritual purpose, creating perhaps the most elaborate and loving approach to death that humanity has ever developed. The process of mummification, which has captured imaginations for centuries, reveals the incredible sophistication of Egyptian understanding about preserving the physical body for its spiritual journey. From what we can learn through ancient texts and modern scientific analysis of mummies, this process was far more than simple preservation. It was a sacred transformation that could take up to 70 days to complete. The mummification process began with the gentle washing and purification of the body, a ritual that honored the deceased while preparing them for their journey. The embalmers, who were considered sacred craftsmen, worked with reverence and precision, understanding that they were facilitating one of life's most important transitions. The removal of internal organs was done with careful ceremony, with each organ preserved separately in beautiful canopic jars, protected by specific gods. What's particularly fascinating is how the brain was removed through the nose using long, thin instruments, while the heart, considered the seat of intelligence and emotion, was typically left in place or returned to the body after treatment. This decision reveals the Egyptian understanding that the heart would be needed for the crucial weighing ceremony in the afterlife, where it would be judged against the feather of Ma'at. The process of drying the body using natron salt was both practical and spiritual. Natron, a naturally occurring mixture of sodium carbonate and sodium bicarbonate found in Egyptian salt lakes, not only preserved the body, but was believed to purify it spiritually. The body was packed in natron for 40 days, during which time prayers and rituals were performed to ensure the deceased's spiritual protection. After the drying period, the body was carefully wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen bandages, with amulets and protective charms placed between the layers. Each amulet had specific spiritual significance: the Djed pillar for stability, the Tayet knot for protection by Isis, the heart scarab to ensure the heart would speak favorably during judgment. These weren't random superstitions, but carefully chosen spiritual tools designed to assist the soul during its afterlife journey. The creation of the burial mask, most famously exemplified by Tutankhamun's golden mask, was itself a profound spiritual act. These masks weren't merely decorative, but were believed to provide the deceased with an idealized, eternally youthful face that would serve them in the afterlife. The gold used in royal masks wasn't chosen for its monetary value, but because gold was considered the flesh of the gods, imperishable and divine. The Book of the Dead, which we touched on earlier, deserves deeper exploration for its beautiful complexity and spiritual sophistication. This wasn't a single book, but rather a collection of spells that could be customized for each individual's needs and circumstances. Wealthy individuals might have elaborate versions with numerous spells and beautiful illustrations, while those of more modest means might have simpler versions with just the most essential guidance. The spells in the Book of the Dead reveal a profound understanding of the psychological and spiritual challenges of dying and transitioning to the afterlife. Spell 125, the Declaration of Innocence, provided the deceased with the proper words to speak during the judgment scene, essentially a confession of moral purity that covered every aspect of ethical living. This wasn't about deception, but about affirming a life lived in accordance with Ma'at. The beautiful illustrations that accompanied these texts served as visual guides for the afterlife journey. The famous scene of the weighing of the heart shows the deceased being led by Anubis to a great balance, where their heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was lighter than or equal to the feather, the deceased was declared justified and could proceed to eternal life. If the heart was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by Amit, a creature part crocodile, part lion, and part hippopotamus. What's particularly beautiful about this judgment scene is that it wasn't portrayed as harsh or punitive, but as a natural consequence of how one had chosen to live. The emphasis was always on preparation and moral living rather than fear of punishment. The Egyptians provided detailed guidance for living according to Ma'at, precisely so that this judgment would be a joyful affirmation rather than a fearful reckoning. The Egyptian understanding of the soul's components reveals sophisticated psychological and spiritual insights that continue to fascinate scholars today. The Ka, often translated as life force, was believed to be the spiritual double of the physical body, requiring sustenance through food offerings and memorial rituals. The bee, typically depicted as a bird with a human head, represented the personality and individual characteristics that made each person unique. The AKH was the glorified spirit that achieved immortality through successful navigation of the afterlife trials. These concepts suggest that the Egyptians understood human consciousness as multi-layered and complex, with different aspects serving different spiritual functions. This sophisticated understanding of consciousness and identity reveals a culture that had spent centuries contemplating the deepest questions about what makes us human and what aspects of humanity might survive bodily death. The construction of tombs and pyramids involved incredibly sophisticated understanding of both engineering and symbolism. The pyramid shape itself was deeply meaningful, representing the primordial mound from which all creation emerged, as well as the rays of the sun descending to earth. The orientation of pyramids and tombs was carefully calculated to align with celestial phenomena. Stars, sun positions, and constellation movements that held spiritual significance. The internal layout of tombs was designed as a map of the afterlife journey. Passages represented the paths through the Duat. Chambers symbolized different stages of transformation, and the decorations served as both protection and guidance for the deceased. Every hieroglyph, every color, every image was chosen for its spiritual significance in assisting the soul's journey to eternal life. The role of priests and priestesses in afterlife preparation reveals the communal nature of Egyptian death practices. Specialized priests performed different aspects of the mummification and burial process, while others maintain the daily offerings and rituals that sustain the deceased in the afterlife. This wasn't a solitary journey, but a community effort to ensure that every individual could successfully transition to eternal life. The beautiful concept of Ushabti, figures, small statuettes buried with the deceased, reveals the Egyptian understanding that the afterlife would include work and responsibility, but that these could be managed through preparation and foresight. These figures, often inscribed with spell 6 from the Book of the Dead, would magically come to life in the afterlife to perform labor on behalf of the deceased, allowing them to enjoy eternal leisure while still maintaining the productivity that the Egyptians valued. The daily life of ordinary Egyptians was profoundly shaped by afterlife preparation. From what we can learn through archaeological evidence, even poor families saved throughout their lives to afford proper burial preparation. This wasn't vanity or obsession with death, but a beautiful expression of faith in the continuity of existence and love for family members who would need spiritual support for their eternal journey. The seasonal festivals that honored the dead reveal how afterlife beliefs were woven into the fabric of daily Egyptian life. During the beautiful festival of the valley, families would visit tombs, bring food offerings, and essentially picnic with their deceased relatives, maintaining ongoing relationships that death couldn't sever. These festivals weren't somber occasions, but joyful celebrations of continued connection. The evolution of afterlife beliefs across different social classes shows the democratizing effect of Egyptian spiritual wisdom. What began as exclusively royal prerogatives gradually spread to include nobles, then priests and officials, and eventually common people. This expansion reveals a culture that increasingly recognized the spiritual worth and potential of all individuals, regardless of their earthly status. The beautiful tradition of tomb biography, detailed autobiographical inscriptions that nobles and officials included in their tombs, reveals how Egyptians understood that their earthly achievements and moral character would be relevant in the afterlife. These weren't boastful displays, but careful accounts of how they had served Ma'at through their professional and personal lives. As we explore these fascinating details, we begin to understand that Egyptian afterlife beliefs weren't abstract theological concepts, but practical, lived wisdom that shaped every aspect of how these remarkable people understood life, death, and the profound connections between them. As we continue to float gently through this exploration of ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs, let's discover how all these beautiful elements, the mummification rituals, the pyramid symbolism, the Book of the Dead, the gods and goddesses, and the soul's journey weave together into a unified tapestry of hope and transformation that reveals profound truths about human nature and our deepest longings. What becomes clear as we examine these beliefs holistically is that the Egyptians created not just a religion about death, but a complete philosophy of life that understood mortality as the natural culmination of existence rather than its tragic interruption. Every aspect of their afterlife preparation was designed to honor the beauty and value of earthly life while preparing for its transformation into something even more wonderful. The connection between daily moral living and afterlife success reveals how Egyptian spirituality was profoundly practical and ethical. The emphasis on Ma'at, truth, justice, and cosmic balance wasn't just about following religious rules, but about recognizing that how we treat others, how we speak, how we work, and how we love creates the spiritual foundation for our eternal existence. This beautiful understanding suggests that every moment of life is meaningful and contributes to our ultimate spiritual development. When we examine the role of the pharaoh in Egyptian afterlife beliefs, we see how these ancient people understood leadership and responsibility in spiritual terms. The pharaoh wasn't just a political ruler, but a spiritual intermediary whose successful transition to godhood ensured the continued prosperity and spiritual protection of all Egyptian people. This concept of leadership as spiritual service, where power comes with the responsibility to ensure the well-being of others even beyond death, offers profound insights into healthy authority and community responsibility. The democratization of afterlife beliefs over Egyptian history reveals something beautiful about human spiritual evolution. As these practices spread from royal exclusive to widespread accessibility, we see a culture gradually recognizing that spiritual worth isn't determined by earthly status, but by moral character and proper preparation. This evolution suggests that Egyptian civilization was moving toward increasingly inclusive and egalitarian spiritual understanding. The relationship between Egyptian afterlife beliefs and their understanding of natural cycles reveals a profound ecological wisdom that feels especially relevant to our modern world. The Egyptians saw death and resurrection everywhere in nature, in the daily cycle of the sun, in the annual flooding of the Nile, in the seasonal growth and death of plants. Their afterlife beliefs weren't separate from nature, but deeply embedded in natural observation and reverence for the cycles that sustain all life. The beautiful connection between preservation and transformation in Egyptian thinking offers insights into how we might understand change and continuity in our own lives. The mummification process preserved the body not to keep it unchanged, but to prepare it for transformation into a glorified, eternal form. This suggests that honoring what we've been while preparing for what we might become is a fundamental aspect of healthy spiritual development. The role of memory and remembrance in Egyptian afterlife beliefs reveals their understanding that love and connection transcend physical death. The elaborate tomb preparations, the daily offerings, the festivals celebrating the dead, all these practices maintained living relationships with those who had passed into the afterlife. This beautiful understanding suggests that death doesn't end relationships, but transforms them, requiring new forms of expression and connection. The Egyptian emphasis on preparation and knowledge for the afterlife journey offers insights into how we might approach any major life transition. Their careful study of what awaited the soul after death, their detailed instructions for navigation and protection, their provision of spiritual tools and guidance, all reveal a culture that understood that successful transitions require both knowledge and spiritual preparation. The integration of art, architecture, and spirituality in Egyptian afterlife practices reveals how these ancient people understood that beauty and meaning are inseparable. Every tomb painting, every sculptural detail, every architectural element served both aesthetic and spiritual purposes. This integration suggests that true spirituality engages all human faculties: intellectual, emotional, artistic, and practical, rather than compartmentalizing religion as separate from the rest of life. The communal nature of Egyptian afterlife preparation reveals their understanding that individual spiritual development occurs within community context. The priests who performed rituals, the craftsmen who created tomb goods, the families who maintained memorial offerings, all participated in ensuring successful afterlife transitions. This community approach to death and spirituality offers alternatives to the individualistic approaches that often characterize modern spiritual seeking. The Egyptian understanding of time in relation to the afterlife reveals sophisticated insights into the nature of eternity and human consciousness. Their concept of the afterlife wasn't about endless duration, but about quality of existence. The perfection of earthly pleasures and relationships in a realm beyond the limitations of physical reality. This understanding of eternity as perfected present rather than endless future offers comfort to anyone contemplating mortality. The beautiful balance between human effort and divine grace in Egyptian afterlife beliefs reveals a mature spiritual understanding that recognizes both personal responsibility and the need for spiritual assistance. The deceased had to live ethically and prepare properly, but they also needed the guidance of gods like Anubis and Thoth, the protection of magical spells, and the support of community rituals. This balance between self-reliance and spiritual dependence offers wisdom for anyone seeking to understand their role in their own spiritual development. The transformation of Egyptian afterlife beliefs over time reveals how authentic spiritual wisdom adapts to changing circumstances while maintaining essential truths. From the simple early burials to the elaborate pyramid complexes to the democratic Book of the Dead, we see a tradition that remained flexible and responsive while never losing its fundamental optimism about death as transformation rather than ending. The influence of Egyptian afterlife beliefs on subsequent cultures reveals how profound spiritual insights transcend their original cultural context to offer guidance and comfort across time and geography. The fact that these ancient beliefs continue to inspire and influence people today suggests that they touch something universal in human experience: our need for meaning in the face of mortality, our desire for continuity beyond physical existence, and our hope that love and goodness are stronger than death. As we weave all these gentle connections together, we begin to see that Egyptian afterlife beliefs offer not just historical interest, but practical wisdom for anyone seeking to live meaningfully in the face of mortality. Their understanding that death is transformation, that preparation matters, that love continues, and that moral living creates spiritual foundation, offers guidance that remains relevant across millennia. The beautiful Egyptian vision that earthly life is preparation for eternal existence suggests that every day, every choice, every relationship contributes to our ultimate spiritual development. This understanding can transform how we approach both living and dying, offering purpose and hope that extends far beyond our brief time in physical form. As we reach the gentle end of our journey through the peaceful realm of ancient Egyptian afterlife beliefs, let yourself settle deeper into comfort, knowing that we've explored together one of humanity's most beautiful and hopeful visions of what lies beyond mortal life. The wisdom we've discovered tonight offers not just fascinating historical knowledge, but profound comfort for anyone contemplating the great mystery of death and what may follow. The ancient Egyptians, across their 3,000-year civilization, developed an understanding of death that was fundamentally optimistic and loving. They saw death not as an enemy to be feared, but as a friend leading them toward transformation and eternal peace. This beautiful perspective, maintained across millennia of cultural change and historical upheaval, reveals a profound human wisdom about finding hope in the face of life's greatest uncertainty. What makes their vision so comforting is its emphasis on preparation rather than fear, transformation rather than ending, and the continuity of love and connection beyond physical existence. The elaborate care they took in preparing for the afterlife journey, the detailed guidance, the protective spells, the community support, the beautiful art and architecture, all reveal a culture that understood death as the culmination of life rather than its defeat. The Egyptian understanding that the soul consists of multiple aspects: the Ka that requires nourishment, the Ba that travels between worlds, the Akaich that achieves immortality, offers a sophisticated framework for understanding consciousness that doesn't end with bodily death. This complex view of human spiritual nature suggests that what makes us truly human, our personalities, our loves, our accumulated wisdom, continues beyond physical existence. The beautiful concept of the weighing of the heart reveals how the Egyptians understood that moral living creates spiritual foundation for eternal existence. This wasn't harsh judgment, but natural consequence. those who lived with truth, justice, and compassion found their hearts light enough for eternal life. This gentle understanding suggests that how we treat others, how we speak truth, how we show kindness, all contribute to our spiritual development in ways that extend far beyond earthly life. The democratization of Egyptian afterlife beliefs over their long history reveals a gradually expanding understanding that eternal life is available to all people, regardless of earthly status or material wealth. This beautiful evolution suggests that spiritual worth isn't determined by external circumstances, but by moral character and proper preparation, insights that remain profoundly relevant for anyone seeking meaning in our contemporary world. The Egyptian emphasis on community support for afterlife transition offers comfort to anyone facing loss or contemplating their own mortality. The priests who performed rituals, the families who maintained offerings, the friends who participated in memorial festivals, all understood that helping others navigate the afterlife journey was both spiritual service and practical necessity. This communal approach to death suggests that none of us need face life's transitions alone. As you drift toward sleep tonight, let yourself be comforted by the Egyptian understanding that love and careful preparation can ensure safe passage through life's greatest transition. Their elaborate tomb preparations, their detailed guidance for the soul's journey, their faith in divine assistance and protection all reveal a culture that understood death as manageable challenge rather than insurmountable catastrophe. The beautiful Egyptian vision of the afterlife as perfected earthly existence, the field of reeds, where crops grew tall without labor, where families reunited without conflict, where all pleasures were available without limitation, offers hope that death might bring not loss, but fulfillment of everything good about mortal existence. This comforting understanding suggests that what we love about life might be preserved and perfected rather than abandoned. The continued influence of Egyptian afterlife beliefs across cultures and centuries reveals how their gentle wisdom about death and transformation continues to offer comfort and guidance to people seeking meaning in the face of mortality. From ancient Greek mystery religions to early Christianity to contemporary spiritual practices, these beautiful insights about death as transformation continue to provide hope and direction. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that the ancient Egyptians spent millennia developing practical wisdom about preparing for life's greatest transition. Their understanding that consciousness preparation, moral living, and community support can ease the passage from earthly to eternal existence offers guidance that remains relevant regardless of your personal beliefs about what follows death. Let yourself rest in the knowledge that the ancient Egyptians spent millennia developing practical wisdom about preparing for life's greatest transition. Their understanding that consciousness preparation, moral living, and community support can ease the passage from earthly to eternal existence offers guidance that remains relevant regardless of your personal beliefs about what follows death. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself floating gently down the celestial river that the Egyptians believed carried souls to eternal life. Feel yourself surrounded by the loving protection of gods like Anubis and Isis, guided by the wisdom contained in texts like the Book of the Dead, supported by the prayers and offerings of those who love you. Let the beautiful Egyptian understanding that death is transformation rather than ending bring you peace and comfort. The ancient Egyptian promise that proper preparation and moral living can ensure a peaceful afterlife journey offers hope that transcends specific religious beliefs. Their gentle wisdom suggests that facing mortality with knowledge, preparation, and faith transforms death from fearsome unknown into manageable passage towards something beautiful and eternal. Rest well tonight, knowing that across human history, people have found comfort in the Egyptian understanding that love is stronger than death, that consciousness continues beyond physical existence, and that careful preparation and moral living create foundation for peaceful transition into whatever lies beyond mortal life. Sweet dreams, and may the ancient Egyptian blessing of peaceful passage accompany you into restful sleep. May you live, may you be prosperous, may you be healthy, and may you find your way safely to the beautiful West, where the justified ones rest in peace forever. Good night.